Good morning, and thank you for joining me here today. As fall officially begins, I wanted to update you on our work in Congress. The business of the last 3 weeks for the House of Representatives has been the passage of the extension of funding for the federal government. It's called a continuing resolution. If Congress had not taken action by September 30th, the entire federal government would have shut down. So thankfully, the House passed this critical extension for government funding on Wednesday, and it was a vote of 341 to 82. And I voted yes on the legislation because the ramifications of a government shutdown, well, it's serious. Government shutdowns affect and impact important services like the USDA food inspections, career counseling for our veterans, the processing of our passports and visas. It would have stopped. TSA agents and air traffic controllers who are responsible for our safety in the air, well, they would have been forced to work without pay. Pay also would have been halted for park rangers. And yes, even the IRS agents wouldn't have been paid. But government shutdowns do affect families, communities, and our economy at whole. So Congress should never get this close to having a government shutdown. This happened because the Senate had not passed a single appropriations bill. And in the House, the MAGA Republicans were only able to pass 5 of their 12 bills that fund our government. Now, why did this happen? It happened because the House Republican majority drafted hyper-partisan bills that slashed services to the American people. And they were just too extreme. In fact, they were too extreme for moderate Republicans still in Congress. But at the same time, I want to be clear, they weren't extreme enough for the MAGA Republicans that serve in the US House of Representatives. So instead of working with Democrats to fund our government for the next fiscal year, Republicans have spent this entire year fighting amongst themselves. And this is just another example of the chaos and dysfunction that has plagued the House of Representatives since they first failed to elect a speaker on the first day of Congress. So there's another part that plays into us not getting our appropriations bills done, and that is Project 2025. Now, I know you've all heard about it. Make no mistake. Project 2025 is being taken out for a test drive. The Republican funding bills, well, they had key parts of Project 2025 baked into them. Project 2025, I can't stress enough, it is terrible for American families. So I'll just take a minute to give you a few examples of Project 2025 proposals that were inserted into the spending bills. For example, it eliminated funding for Title X family planning, and that includes eliminating support services for preventive healthcare services. Screenings like cancer screenings would have stopped. Help with contraception would not have been funded. And that would have affected over 2.5 million low-income Americans. It also reduced support for women, infants, and children, WIC, by $462 million. It even cut the one federal program that supports affordable housing construction. They cut that by 60% in the housing bill, even though we're seeing nationally a 12% increase in homelessness just this year. And it even underfunded veterans' health care, a promise that we make to those who wear the uniform to defend our democracy, cutting their benefits. The MAGA Republicans' extreme funding bills, well, they were completely unacceptable. And I want you to know I voted against every single one of them. But when it came time to pass the CR on Wednesday to keep our government open, Democrats voted to keep the government open because we believe it's important to act responsibility to keep your government working for you. Now, as the 118th Congress is coming to a close, the MAGA extremist political games, they need to end. It's time for my Republican colleagues to lay the partisanship down and to get serious, to join us as Democrats, working together, rolling up our sleeves to keep our government funded for an entire fiscal year in a bipartisan, bicameral fashion. Now, I talked about some of the challenges we're facing in Washington, but I want you to know about some things I've been working on here at home. These are issues that not only impact Minnesota, but they're important to our nation as a whole. In September, I introduced a new piece of legislation. It's called the Cold-Blooded Animal Research and Exhibition Act. We're calling it CARE for short. The bill would amend the Animal Welfare Act to cover all warm-blooded and cold-blooded animals. Now, I introduced this legislation after watching an investigative report on KSTP that documented cruel and dangerous conditions that animals are subject to at Sequest, and the risk that these violations, I'm going to make them violations, now they aren't right now, possess to public health. For those who are not familiar with Sequest, it is a chain of interactive aquariums with local location here in Roseville, Minnesota. Now, unfortunately, the animals and children that are interacting with one another are frequently kept in unsafe and sanitary conditions, and exposes them to the risk of disease and injury. So by expanding the Animal Welfare Act to be updated to establish basic standards of care for these animals, it will not only protect them from abuse, but it will protect employees and the public at large from getting sick or becoming injured. If you'd like to learn more about the CARE Act, you can find information on my website at mccollum.house.gov. I asked for some questions as we prepared this webinar, and I want to thank for all of you who reached in. Overwhelmingly, I received questions from constituents related to the tragic situation in Gaza and the violence that is expanding across the region. On October 7th, a year ago, when the terrorist organization Hamas killed hundreds of innocent Israelis and took many more hostage, it set off a chain of events that has caused violence to escalate in the region. To be clear, Hamas and Hezbollah are both terrorist organizations. I want you to know that I've been calling for a regional ceasefire since the beginning of the violence in October. And I will continue to press the Biden administration to work with the Israeli government and our partners in the Middle East to negotiate a ceasefire with Hamas that reunites Israeli hostages and their families, as well as a ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon. The violence in Gaza must end. The violence in the West Bank must end. These wars must end. I want you to also know that I've had grave concerns about the way the Israeli military has conducted its operations, both in Gaza and the West Bank. I believe, and many others do, they have failed to live up to the international standards we expect. I've sent letters expressing my grave concerns about the way the Israeli military has conducted its operations. I've sent letters to the Biden administration, and I have publicly expressed to Israel my concerns on the way that they are conducting military operations. And just again, on September 12th, I sent a letter to Secretary Blinken with 20 of my colleagues calling for the accountability for the Israeli government and security forces for the death of Ms. Icky, an American citizen who was killed protesting the illegal expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank. The Biden administration and our allies must do everything in our power to de-escalate and bring these violent conflicts to an end. Failure to do so will have I can't even describe what I'm afraid of, the consequences for Lebanon and Israel, the region, and the world, if we do not bring these violent actions to an end. We must do everything in our power. So please feel free to express your opinion, share your thoughts, but know you can learn more about what I've been doing with my statements and the letters that I've sent. And here again, you can visit my section on the Middle East on the website. This is something that has to come to an end. Now, coming back home again, there have been some good things that have happened here recently. One of them is supporting our veterans. 2 weeks ago, I joined veterans, women veterans primarily, and local officials for the groundbreaking of the new women's clinic at the VA Medical Center in Minneapolis. I know firsthand, as a daughter of a veteran, how important the VA system is to keeping the promise that we make to those who are wounded and injured and serve our country. And I also know the failures in the past of not having a welcome place with the right kind of medical attention and response that our women veterans need. And in my role is the subcommittee ranking member on defense appropriations. I know when we have someone enlist, they enlist with the promise of having health care. And as we see more and more women joining our military, it's important that we have the right health care for them, not only while they're serving, but after they are done serving our nation wearing the uniform. So I am very excited for this new clinic to get up and running and see how it will serve the needs of our women veterans. For all of those who have served our country and families who've supported our veterans while they return home, and for those of you who have people who are serving right now, thank you for all you do to keep our democracy strong. Now, we also got some exciting news from the State Department. So moving forward, you may now apply for your passport renewal using the State Department online portal. Yay! It's going to save you time, it's going to save you hassle, and it's going to save you money in the long run. But you have to look at your passport and you have to pay attention to its expiration date. Remember, once you get close to that 6 months, it's time to start planning to update your passport now. So I want you to check your eligibility if you're planning on traveling abroad, and that includes Canada and Mexico this winter. Check your eligibility, visit travel.state.gov. Now, the other exciting news that's happening as we prepare for Medicare Part D re-enrollment or open enrollment for the first time for many of you, it's important for you to remember that it starts on October 15th. So get ready. I know you've seen the commercials, you've gotten the stuff in the mail. Get ready to make the decision that is right for you. And if you have questions, the Senior Linkage Line is a great place to go to get good information. But here's some even better news. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a new benefit for Medicare beneficiaries. You can now smooth your payment for your out-of-pocket expenses over the course of a year. Out-of-pocket costs continue to be capped at $2,000, but you can spread those payments out over 12 months so you can budget yourself. So if this is something that's good for you and you want to learn more about it, go check it out. And remember, you have to opt in, or else you won't be eligible to smooth these payments over it. It is not automatic. It's your choice to do it, but you have to make the choice. There's been a lot of talk about what's going on in our economy. So I want you to know that I really sincerely believe that we're seeing some bright spots. Now, interest rates are down, inflation is down, and growth is up. But it's important to remember that we're just 2 years out from a pandemic, a global pandemic that wreaked havoc on our economy and the economy of the world at large. When President Trump left office, inflation was about 2.5%. Today, it has returned to that level of 2.5%. But let's talk about what happened in between. COVID. Businesses were closing. Workers were losing their jobs. People were getting sick, and too many people died. Supply chains were a mess. The Democrats, in response to that, passed the Inflation Reduction Act. And that's the brown line you're looking at on the chart. If you look at that, since then, inflation has fallen, and it's fallen dramatically. I want to be clear. I know prices are still high. I run into you at the grocery store and we're talking about it. See you at Target, and along with asking me questions about passports and other things, we're talking about the price of things. So I know that families are still feeling stress, but we have to remember what we are coming out of, and that we are beginning to stabilize, and that things are getting better, and we have to continue the path forward to continue to make our economy stronger. It's also important to know that so many other countries around the world that didn't take action like we did with the Inflation Reduction Act, they're not seeing this sort of recovery. I hear from my colleagues around the world that they are still dealing with high inflation rates. So I'm grateful for the vote that I took for the Inflation Reduction Act, but I know that there's still more work to do, and I'm ready to do that work. I want to close with this. This is October. We won't talk again on a webinar until November. We are 38 days from an election. And as many of you who know me personally know, my mother was a Republican, my father was a Democrat, and I have a lot of people in my family who are just plain independent. And that's great. So whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, it's just important that you vote. We want to keep our status here in Minnesota in line with the highest voter turnout in the country, too. Altogether, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, we enjoy those bragging rights. So know that you have options. You can vote by mail, you can vote in person, or you can vote on election day. No matter how you vote, no matter who you vote for, it's important that you vote, that your voice is heard, and that your vote counts. Our democracy works better when all of us participate. So please visit minnesotavotes.gov for more information on how to register, where to vote, and how to submit your ballot. So before we part ways, I want to just remind you again that my team here in Minnesota will continue to work tirelessly with issues that you're facing with the federal government, including IRS, Social Security, the U.S. Post Office, State Department, or any other services that you rely upon. We're here to help you navigate the federal government. And if you're not sure if it's a federal or if it's a state or a local issue, my staff will be happy to assist you if it's not a federal issue with that first call that you need to make for help. I want you to know it's a great honor serving you. I look forward to being home in Minnesota working the next month. It's going to be, fabulous weather so far. And please know that we're here to work for you. If you have questions about legislation, you can call either one of our offices. They'll direct you to the right person. But for right now, Washington is in recess. And that just means I'm not working. I'm working. It just means I'm not voting in Washington, D.C. So don't hesitate to call. Don't hesitate to reach out. Until then, let's all play a role in what we can do to make our community stronger, safer, more resilient, and live in a more peaceful world. Thank you so much for listening.